Hello and welcome back to Radiant Womanhood. I am excited for today's episode because we are talking about something that you can do right now, today, to lead to big transformations in your life. But I am going to warn you, it's not actually all that fun or exciting in itself. Today, we are talking about the power of consistency and how these little things that we do every day can actually be the things that lead to big transformations. A lot of times we think in terms of big and huge, and I need to do this thing and shoot for the stars. And yes, I want you to dream big. I want you to plan massive for yourself. I want you to shoot for the stars. But what brings those things into your life, what helps you reach those big, massive, huge things are the small things that we do consistently. Like right now, I'm drinking my greens. There we go. But before we dive into this, let's pause for just a moment and think about time. Time doesn't stop moving forward, does it? I mean, as a mom, I see that so clearly in front of me. My youngest have started preschool. My oldest has graduated this last year and then just graduated Army boot camp. Like we are celebrating and moving through all of these milestones in my family's life. And it's showing me that, yes, the pace may be gradual, the arrival and departure are inevitable. Time creates this illusion sometimes. So it's these big best moments seem to fly by. And then sometimes we're in the thick of it. And it's like, okay, this is dragging on. It's like when we're in the newborn stage and those night feedings and the nights feel so long because we're sleepy and we're tired and yet awake this whole time. And yet here we are. And that person that I was just staying awake through the night with is an adult or they are in school now. But here's the thing, each of us is given the same 24 hours in a day, the same repeating 365 times a year. We all look at the same clock, the same time, the same calendar. And I love this quote by Stephen Covey that says, if you keep doing what you are doing, you're only going to keep getting whatever you are getting. It would be insane to expect different outcomes while you continue to live the way you do. So here is my question. Why do we keep waiting for the quote unquote right moment to make a change, or waiting for the perfect opportunity for this big thing, or the right time to start shooting for the stars or doing this big thing when we could be using these daily moments, these same 24 hours that all of us have repeating over and over and over 365 times a year. We could be using that to move forward. A lot of times it's easy to look back and identify these moments in our lives that changed our lives, but while we're living through them, they seem so normal, so ordinary. So here is my challenge to you today. What if we decide together that we are going to recognize the value of these everyday, ordinary moments right now? And even in that, even in recognizing that, maybe we'd even appreciate these ordinary days a little bit more. I have to tell you that, and I know it probably feels like I'm bringing up the same thing over and over, but even just going through the last few weeks that we did with two major hurricanes, both in the locations where we have a home, our rental property in the mountains in North Carolina, and our home just outside of Tampa, Florida. So we were in like these paths of hurricanes. We were getting to our daughter's graduation, like all of the stuff that was happening. Honestly, we were on the road driving in a car full of 5 kids to go get to my 6th child or my first child's graduation in a car for 2 weeks. It really made me appreciate my bed and my bedroom and our home and those ordinary days a little bit more. But what if we looked at them in a whole different way as well, to say these everyday moments, there's so much value in them. The things that I do, the habits that I have, there is so much value in them. And I don't have to wait for these huge, big opportunities for change or transformation in my life. If there's something that I want to see in myself, in my body, in my family, in my marriage, in my home, in my business, I can work on those throughout my ordinary days, throughout these normal, mundane, everyday moments with consistency. And at its core, consistency is about showing up. No matter how small the action might feel or this thing might be, sometimes like time, consistency feels slow moving, right? It feels like, okay, but I'm just walking for 15 minutes. That's not making a big change, but it is when you do it consistently. It's incredibly powerful when it's compounded. It's those small daily habits like making your bed, drinking water, or drinking your greens, or taking a moment for mindfulness to think about what am I thinking about. All of these little moments that accumulate and create the foundation for these bigger, larger transformations, for those big things that you're wanting to see in your life. Honestly, it's what opens up the door for opportunity for us as well, especially getting in the mindset of looking at challenges and looking at things as opportunities. Ooh, you'll be able to see those big opportunities right away. But consistency doesn't have to be, and in fact, it's not about doing things perfectly. It's not about perfection. It's not about any of that. It's about persistence and the commitment to keep showing up, even when it feels insignificant. So just like Stephen Covey said, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting the same results. So we get to be intentional about what it is that we're doing consistently. What are those little actions that truly shape the outcome in our lives? So why is consistency so powerful? First, it builds momentum. When you consistently show up, whether it is for a daily walk, whether it is for that moment of gratitude and helping your mindset shift and see things differently, which brings you in the habit of seeing things differently, or maybe it's a commitment to learning, it creates this positive energy, this momentum that keeps you going. You don't have to rely on motivation alone, which we all know can be fleeting. It changes based on so many things, emotions, how we're feeling, all of that motivation changes, but momentum starts to come from consistency. It's like pushing a snowball uphill or a snowball at all. The first few moments are the hardest, but once it gets going and actually then it starts to go downhill, it grows and it picks up speed. But why? It was because you were consistent in making it happen at the beginning. And even for this podcast, the one I recorded last week was from our car in the middle of the mountains of North Carolina. I had turned the car off just so it wouldn't have as much noise. And it was cold. It was like the cold front was coming through. I had a hat on. I didn't have the equipment. The kids were kind of running around. But you know what? I was determined to be consistent. I was determined to show up for myself, for one, for this podcast, for myself to say, this is something I've committed to. This is something I love doing, and I'm going to be consistent with it. And to show up for you, to be consistent with, I'm pledging to be consistent with sharing with you where I'm at. Sometimes it's vulnerable. Sometimes it's exciting. Sometimes it's what I'm learning. Usually it's all of that at the same time. But I'm committing to being consistent to that. So I'm going to make it happen, even when conditions aren't ideal, even when it feels strange or it's hard or it's different, or I might be crying halfway through it or before or after or while I'm writing it. It's consistency. And you know what else consistency does is it begins to build trust. And I'm not talking about just with others, but yes, I feel like me being consistent here with you to show up when I say I'm going to show up, which is every Tuesday when we have a season going, that builds trust with you to know that I'm going to be there, that I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. But you know what? It builds trust with yourself. Being consistent is keeping those promises to yourself. And when you keep your promises, your confidence grows. It grows confidence in yourself. But it's making the commitment to, even when it feels insignificant or even when it feels hard, I'm going to do the thing. It's not about perfection. It's not about large, grand things. I'm not saying commit to an hour in the gym every day from zero to that. That is not a feasible transformation. I'm talking about these small habit changes that in turn produce a transformation. consistent effort might sometimes feel slow. And that's what I talked about, where there's times when time feels slow. Consistency can sometimes feel slow, like I said, but that's what leads to a lasting change. There's a saying that says, small hinges swing big doors. And that is the magic of consistent small actions over time. It's those small things, those small hinges that are swinging the big doors, that are making those big transformations and changes in your life if you stay consistent, if you keep those promises to yourself of little steps, little habits every day. And like I said, I'm not coming on here saying, shake it all up, make all these big changes. No, small. What is one small step that you can commit to right now and work on the consistency in that? There's a study from Harvard Business Review that found that tracking and celebrating small wins is incredibly effective for maintaining motivation. So it's the accumulation of these daily victories that helps people stick with the long-term goals. And that's what happens with consistency. It begins over time to build this accumulation of these small daily victories. I walked my 10 minutes today. I walked my 15 minutes today. I did my 10,000 steps today. I drank my greens today. Like, what is one thing that you can begin adding that at the end of the day, whether come hell or high water, whatever else happened in the day, you have this daily victory. I kept this promise to myself and I did this thing, this small thing. I have this small win. And speaking of small wins, there's a popular concept known as the 1% rule. And I know we've talked about it here before. You probably have heard it before, but we are going to talk about it again because if you aim to improve just 1%, just 1% every day, that begins to change and grow, and you'll be 37 times better by the end of the year. The hardest part is often the starting. It's that step in the starting. But once you achieve that first 1%, you begin to build that momentum. So a lot of times this rule is used like with athletes and high performers to gradually increase their abilities over time. They're looking at the small things and what's that tiny little tweak, a tiny little change that we can make, but gradually in building these things up and compounding them over time, that's where the transformation happens. That's where the beauty happens. So in the early 2000s, the British cycling team was not a high performer. And I think I've mentioned this on one of the episodes in the first season, but they began to focus on areas of improvement, just 1%, 1%, little things. So in areas like nutrition, what can we change? Just 1%, one little thing we can change. Bike weight. Okay, it's not a big change, but we're going to take off just a little bit of this bike weight. Let's improve it 1%. I even got to getting into the pillows that their team slept on, that the cyclists, when they slept, let's change their pillows. Let's make an increase 1% better. And through all of these micro changes that they were doing over time, their team transformed and saw tremendous results. And these incremental changes led to the British cycling team dominating the Olympics at the time, winning the Tour de France multiple times. But why? It was little changes over time that added up. And then there's also research by a behavior design expert, BJ Fogg, that suggests that small, consistent habits are easier to form and sustain when they're tied to positive emotions. And so there's this kind of habit loop where you could almost tie something good, a reward, to the habit that you're doing. What is it that it's doing to help improve the way I feel about myself? And some of that is mindset as well. Like, let's celebrate these small wins, these small things, and see the small victories, because then you begin to see, I'm keeping my promise to myself. You could begin to see the motivation come. You see the confidence come in sticking with whatever the small change is a little bit over time, and it compounds. But the key is to repeat the habit enough that it becomes automatic. Kind of like checking your email a lot of times is automatic. And we talk about it as a dopamine hit because it's like this, it's kind of how casinos were built around these quick dopamine hits. Like you check your email, it starts loading and bam, you can see whatever you can see. And it's this hit of dopamine for your body. It gives you this reward. And then it becomes a habit. What do you do when you don't have something to do for a moment with your hands? A lot of times you'll open your phone and just check your email. What habit can we replace that with? For example, walking, not so fun, all of these things. But when you begin to do it, you feel the change in your body. It's the fresh air. It's the getting the sunshine on your face and in your eyes. It's the movement of your body that begins to bring these results. And then it becomes a habit that's rewarding. It becomes a habit that, wow, I feel better. My attitude is better. My mood has changed. What are the small habits that you can start with? Let's start with one. I want to talk about Kaizen for just a minute. And it's a Japanese philosophy that focuses on continuous improvement through, what are we talking about? Small incremental changes. And this is something that Toyota applied, and it's famously out there, something that's been talking about, but they used it to revolutionize how they work in their manufacturing process. And it brought them to the top in sales, in longevity of their vehicles, and all of these things. But instead of focusing on, okay, let's come in and do this huge sweeping thing and change it up with this big innovation, they went through and encouraged every employee from the factory floor to the executive suite to make small suggestions for improvement. What are small things? And then over time, they began implementing tiny improvements in each area that accumulated into becoming this major competitive advantage. So what is it, that philosophy of Kaizen? It teaches us that these small, consistent changes are more sustainable and more effective than trying to go in and overhaul everything at once. Like we said, it's not you're going in and, man, everything in the fridge, throw it all out. We're replacing it all with this. We're going to be in the gym every day for an hour, all of this stuff. And that's just thinking in terms of body, right? But no, let's do a little small incremental change at a time. And same for your business, same for your marriage. If that's something that you want to focus on, what is that small 1% thing that I can do every day? What can become this habit that we do together, or that I do, that helps transform my marriage or my relationship with my kids? What is the area of your life that you want to see some transformation in? Let's start there. Narrow down the focus of, what is that place in my life? Where do I want to see the most transformation next year? We have like 3 months till next year. I bet there could be some transformation by then. Okay. So then pick that area of your life, and what is that 1% better that you can start today? That one thing that you can begin to change your habits on. And instead of trying to make this big drastic change overnight, focus on, what are those small things that I can do consistently, so that over time, those small shifts compound into the big results. Warren Buffett is one of the richest people in the world, but he didn't make his fortune overnight. He consistently invested small amounts of money over a long period of time. And by practicing patience and sticking with his system, he was able to grow his wealth exponentially. But what looked really small at the beginning, it was just small changes, and then small changes and small changes, and it compounded to become this big outcome. It was like a daily small investment that led to this big outcome. And that's how it looks in our life when we make these small investments in what it is you want to transform and change in your life. Think of it as that. Think of this consistent action as, I'm investing in me. Here's my small daily investment in myself. Here's my small daily investment in my marriage. Here's my small daily investment in my family life or my home. This is my small daily investment in my business, or what this dream is that I have. To reiterate, let's choose one area of your life that you want to improve, and then get to identifying what is that tiny habit that you can commit to each day. It's that first 1% that's usually the hardest to start. But once you do, remember that it builds and it brings this momentum. A couple of tips to keep that momentum going is through a habit tracker or a journal. A lot of times that helps. So if it is like a physical thing, I use my watch, and it helps track a lot of my habits, like my sleep habits, my steps, which is one of my small goals and habits that I've been working on. And that helps be this visual reminder of your progress and build that momentum. And also begin to celebrate those small wins, even when it feels small. Like I said, it's at the end of the day, you can say, I did it. I drank my greens. I did it. I did my walk. I did it. I made this small daily investment in my marriage that I was committed to making, or I made this small daily investment in myself for my business that I want to grow. And if you can, find accountability. Have a friend or partner that you want to share your goal with. Start with one, not one accountability, that probably one is good too, but start with one goal. And that will begin to compound and make a huge difference in staying consistent. But sometimes you just need someone to check in on you and check in with you and keep you accountable, or someone to share it with. So just remember that. I want you to remember that time is always moving forward, and it's up to us to decide what we're going to do with it. These little actions that we take daily, improving 1% or showing up for yourself consistently, sticking with a habit and deciding, I am making this small daily investment in myself. These are the things that lead to our biggest transformations. It might not always feel glamorous. It might not feel like it's moving as fast as we want it to, but consistency is one of the most powerful tools that we have to create lasting change. So I want you to share with me if there's something, I want to encourage you in it. Send me a message and let me know if you want me to be accountability for you. Let me know so I can encourage you in this goal that you're doing, this thing that you're deciding to invest, this small daily habit in yourself. What is that area that you want to see transformation? Let's use the next 3 months that we have of this year. Let's make some change. Let's make some transformation. That's through a small, attainable daily habit. Thank you again, you guys. Thank you, friend, for tuning in to Radiant Womanhood. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it. Share it with a friend, post it on social media, post it on your stories, or leave a review if you haven't yet. It would mean so much to me. Stay radiant, and I'll see you next time.